Hello, fellow FEers. These are FE Power cylinder heads. Big nice ports. These are the heads for our 511 cast iron block. We just did an all aluminum engine with these heads, but we're doing a cast iron block and 2 4-barrel carburetors, a lot of compression, a lot of cam, and a lot of cylinder heads. So if you notice, this looks completely different than a standard FE head. If you were to bolt this head onto a block, the exhaust ports are essentially horizontal, level. So a very straight shot right out of the valve. Unfortunately, I'm having to have some custom headers made, but that'll serve a good purpose if we do some more of these builds. But these are the foundation of the build. 5/16 stem valves, titanium intake valves 2-350, stainless lightweight exhaust valves. So these heads flow 457 CFM at 800 lift, and it just so happens that we have an 800 lift cam. The lobe lift on the cam is about 500 thousandths. So the lobe lift on the cam is more than the lift at the valve on Project Junkie Junk Jr. It's hard to believe. So both heads have been washed. I've been swabbing out the valve guides to make sure that they're nice and sparkly clean. The valves have been washed. I'm in the process of checking install height, so we're at 2050 on this exhaust valve, and I'm gonna throw our Next Tech Manly valve springs in our spring pressure tester with some Manly titanium retainers, and we're gonna check our valve spring loads. All right, we're gonna look past my messy head preparation table here. Just focus on our spring pressure tester. So there's different reasons why we check our valve springs, and I want to show you 2 of them and show you how important it is that you go through all this. So here's our Next Tech valve spring with the retainer, and we make allowances at testing time here to account for that retainer. You have to have the retainer in there or it won't load the inner springs, the dampers, whatever you have in here, the way that it would on the engine. It's very important that you duplicate that. So this retainer is 100 thousandths thick. So what happens is we lower our bar down till it touches, and you can watch the pressure bump up a little bit. Then we zero it, then we back it up 100 thousandths and zero it again. And that will allow for the thickness of the retainer. So our install height is, as we measured, 2 inches and 50 thousandths. We're going to crank that in there. So we're at 300 pounds. Now, in and of itself, for this type of engine, 300 pounds isn't anything to worry about. But if you look at the box, at 2 inches, it's supposed to have 288. Okay, so 288 at 2, it only makes sense that when you make the spring taller, the spring load at seat should go down, but we're measuring higher than what we should. Again, 300 pounds isn't any big deal. I would rather have more seat. Seat is what keeps the valves shut when they're supposed to be shut. We're going to go down to 1/200, which is our valve open position. It's going to take me a while to get it here because I'm using one hand, and obviously these big springs are pretty healthy to push down. We're already at approaching 700 pounds here. So 250. So 811, which is fine too. So that's kind of what I was hoping to get. Now here's the second thing. You always check your coil bind, and here's our open spot. So 200. And I'm gonna pull this down until it bottoms out. So 100. So we have a little bit less than 100 thousandths coil bind clearance. Now here's the kicker. Look at all that space in between the coils on that outer spring. This is why we check coil bind clearance. So coil bind is when all the coils are stacked up. The outer spring is not stacked up. What you're seeing is that inner valve spring, the little inner spring that goes down through the middle, is stacked up. So if I were to go and put this spring on the engine and roll the engine over and think, oh, I've got plenty of coil bind clearance, I don't, because the inner spring is stacked up. So if I kept continuing like this, it would bind that inner spring, it would eventually break, and then you would have problems. So if I were to take this out, this assembly out, pull the inner spring out, put the retainer on it, stick it in here and roll it down, you would see that it is solid as a rock at 100. So that's why we check everything. So I can write in my build notes that we have 300-pound seat, about 810 or so pounds at open, and this spring binds at 100, and I've got 15 others to check here. So I'm gonna roll through that. You don't need to watch it. You don't want to watch it. It'll bore you to death, but I'm gonna get this knocked out. Okay, we're back over to our other bench here. Checked all the spring loads and coil bind clearances on all 16 springs. It's quite a bit of a workout when you're cranking down to, by the time you hit coil bind, it's a little over 1,000 pounds of spring load. But I'm going to go through and go ahead and finish checking my install heights to make sure they're all around this number here. And I've got some valve springs that are a little tighter, a little looser, so we'll have to make provisions for that. But I'm going to go through and check all these out. All right, we're not going to get the heads assembled today. All of the exhausts are pretty much right in there with each other, but the intake install height is really short. So considering our coil bind clearance, I'm not comfortable with this. What I'll do is I'll order some plus 50 locks. It'll raise the retainer up, and then I can drop a little shim underneath the locator and get us back to this 2050 number that I want to be at. But we're going to go ahead and do some other checks. I can go ahead and get all the exhaust stuff assembled and then hop over to the other head. But we do have some other checks to do. Our seal to retainer clearance, and we're going to CC a couple of chambers. Here's the business side of things on those heads. Uses an extended reach plug, about a 1-inch reach. Here is the intake valve, under 100 grams. Here's the exhaust valve, about 130 grams. So quite a bit of difference between a titanium valve and a steel valve. You can see if the camera will focus. Here, focus on, there you go. Hardened tip. So no lash caps needed. All right, so one of the important checks that you make is retainer to seal clearance. Unfortunately, I'm at a stopping point. Well, if I quit knocking valve locks down the holes, but you have to take my word for it that we got 860 thousandths. Well, 860 thousandths with 855 thousandths lift doesn't leave any retainer to seal clearance. So it looks like I can't do any of this. What I'll have to do is also put plus 50 thousandths locks on the exhaust side. That will raise our retainer up, and then I can shim up to keep our spring loads the same, but we'll get the retainer away from the valve seal. So in theory, that would give us about 60 thousandths retainer to seal clearance, and that would be good enough. So unfortunately, I'm at a stopping point until I get valve locks in here. What I can do is go ahead and pour a chamber. We'll get some checking springs and everything on here and knock that out. All right, so chamber's being checked, 60.2 cc's. We've got a 4.375 bore with an 11 cc piston, about 3 in the hole, 40 thousandths head gasket, and 60.2 cc's. So we're knocking on 14 to 1, about 13.8 or so. A lot of compression, make a lot of horsepower. This is unfortunately where I'm going to have to leave you, and I have to order some valve locks. So appreciate you tuning in to see what we did have. Hopefully something I said or showed you will help you in your own build. But hope you guys are having a good week, and we'll have a good weekend. If you haven't subscribed, please do so that you don't miss out on any of the tips and tricks and cool Ford stuff we have coming through the shop. Talk to you guys next week, hopefully, and have a good weekend.